never know who to trust here on V'ger Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
And I, too, enjoy a good practical joke, hidden camera TV show. I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, what episode of Star Trek Enterprise did we watch this week?
We watched Punked. Season 3, episode 14. First aired February 4th, 2004. This is Stratagem, teleplay by Mike Sussman. Again, Phyllis Strong, not around. I don't know if there's Trouble in Paradise and those two split ways or what, but story by Terry Matalas, right?
Not a shocker, yeah.
Directed by Mike V'ger. These are, well, Terry Matalas is a little nobody at this point. This is what, his third writing credit, maybe?
Second and last writing credit on Enterprise.
Well, Sussman's there and V'ger's been around the block a lot. This is a good, again, I'm discounting Matalas because he's not going to be a fixture. We know he will go on to better things, but Sussman, V'ger, these are the frequent names, but these are the good frequent names. What I'm saying is it's not Brannon and fucking Berman.
And having Matalas, he wrote the story, and then your more seasoned hand, Sussman comes in and turns it into a teleplay, and then you have a good director. I think that's what ends up building what ultimately, let's get right to the point. This is a good episode. This is a solid entry into the canon of the whole Xindi arc. I purposefully, obviously, drove you away from reading anything about this before you watched it so that you could preserve the experience of watching it to begin with, since the first third of the episode is trying to kind of give you a story and then backfilling later. And I think that it really works well overall. And I'm curious if how much not knowing what was going on helped you in your experience.
Yeah, so I went in blind on this episode because we did skip the customary synopsis that we'll read at the end of an episode.
Oh, for our fans, I wanted to ask you a quick question. Did you just purposely mispronounce synopsis? Was that you charmingly playing into your pronouncing things incorrectly?
Next. Yeah.
Are you just keeping them guessing? Because I always just let it ride.
The answer will be disclosed in Patreon, all right?
Okay, I like that. I like it. It's paywall content.
Paywall the humiliation. It's obvious, I think, pretty quickly that this is a ruse. They have gone to the future and they've gone to the past. There's been so much time travel or, fucking Wild West worlds and stuff. This seemed too serious, especially in the light of Twilight, that they would honestly have another time jump episode or an alternate reality. That said, they sell the ruse very well. And it's a solid episode. I've got some complaints, but they're all very minor. And what really stands out about this episode is that it is on tone perfectly, that there's high stakes. It's a dangerous time for everybody involved. Nobody's fucking around. There's clear desperation. And when you take an episode like this and then you look at some of the other season 4 entries, like fucking True North or whatever, and some of the other silly slapstick shit, it's like, are they intentionally doing these more lighthearted episodes to break up the mood of season 4, or is it just
you keep saying season 4, by the way?
Yeah, season 3, whatever. Or is it just asking too much for a lot of these writers to sit down and read the source material and watch a couple episodes and have a genuine understanding of what they're doing? Terry Matalas obviously is a fan, and it's obviously somebody who is willing to give the source material the fucking time of day. And we've seen that before. Who was the other guy? The guy who did Timeless?
Let's see. I can't remember who did Timeless. Let me
every now and then. I'm thinking of the guy who got was supposed to get Discovery. Fuller, Brian Fuller.
Brian Fuller, yeah.
That was another guy where it's like, okay, clearly you've watched more than an episode and a half. Clearly you understand what the background motivations of these characters are.
Oh, I forgot that Timeless was a story by Rick Berman, Brandon Braga, and Joe Manowski.
There
And
must have been a
obviously,
lot of cocaine in the office that day
well, I mean, and
to
it
hit
was
such
directed by LeVar
staggering heights.
Burton. It was definitely a time where everyone was performing outside their
Okay.
remit.
So a deal with the devil was struck, and time and space were bent to make the impossible happen. But no, you get like Brian Fuller, where it's like, this is a guy who's trying, who has watched, understands the source material, and they're honestly trying. And wow, look at that. Great things are possible.
I share your overall sense that like Metalis being a fan and being a nerd for this stuff is why this episode works, because it is essentially a direct sequel to last week, right? We're following up right on what happened with the Andorians when they were there when they tested the weapon, and
And
literally at that
interestingly,
test.
there's no previously on lead-in, right?
Right.
And there has been that prior. This one would have been a prime candidate because of how heavily the two are intertwined. I'm wondering if it's because they're like, we don't want to like spoil stuff because this is like a plot twist episode, or if it's just like those intros are stupid and we shouldn't do that, and we're not going to do it.
Well, I think honestly it's probably the first, which is it had been a while since they'd gotten onto the plot, so they just wanted to make sure they were reminding the people following along what it was. But the they're right after the weapon test, they're gathering more information about it. We know Degra was there, was on this ship. We see that ship again. They're all of the pieces about like the shipment of the chemosite that they had altered by the arboreals that were on that planet, the conversation that Archer watched, like, because Metalis is a nerd for this stuff and he's read all the scripts and he knows like where this is going to land in the season, he's got it tied into everything that happened before, which is the kind of attention to detail you really want out of a Trek writer, and I think goes to show why he was so ultimately successful when he made Picard season 3, because it's just the sort of thing that he is tuned into because he likes this stuff. He grew up on it. This is his first job in Hollywood. Like, this is he of course he's going to treat it with seriousness, and it pays off in a script that uses all of those elements to provide what you talked about: immediacy, stakes, desperation, getting you invested in what's going on, keeping it flowing. This thing fucking zooms, man. Like, I looked up, it was half over. I mean, it's on a clip. There is one story, they tell it, they and before you know it, it's over. It's a tidy 44 minutes. That 44 minutes begins with the ruse, which is Archer in a tiny shuttle.
Which is so clearly a Type 2 that's been redressed. Like, I've never looked at a set piece and been like, I can see where the windows are, and it's just like shit filled in there.
And they took this redressed Type 2 shuttle and they put Archer in some older man makeup. And we see a Zindi that's familiar to us. We know it's Degra wake up on the ground in this rickety, old looking shuttle of some kind. And Archer is acting like he knows the guy. He doesn't know who Archer is. And he fills him in that, hey, yeah, we were prisoners of the insectoids. No time to talk. We need to get the fuck out of here. Please help me get this fucking bucket of bolts going. And they manage to continue. They, do an oil slick via,
So sad they didn't light their fights on fire, man. I felt that was the one bit of continuity really missing here.
well, they didn't set their farts on fire. I think they just put a bunch of methane gas. They just farted a lot, so they just wafted into their face, and they're like, "Ooh, no!" And then they run away.
Well,
So
since
they
they
didn't have to
used the
set them on
plasma
fire.
to jam up the intake manifolds, like essentially they sharded, so they didn't ever have to
Yes,
light it on fire because there was like particulate matter present, and people are like, "No, I'm
they're
not
busy
dealing with
wiping
this."
off their mouths, like they're truly disgusted. But what we see here is a Archer that is, and there's no indication to the audience right away, trying to convince Degra that they are their boys and that they've been in prison together. They are escaping together, and Degra doesn't remember any of this because he's been recently tortured.
This is the Archer gaslighting spectacular.
It is. This is an episode that's actually about gaslighting someone as an interrogation technique.
I want to talk about Scott Bakula, and I want to talk about Jonathan Archer. I think Bakula does a good job this episode. There's no point in which I feel like he is failing. I don't feel like Jonathan Archer has any petulant points where he is miserable to watch. And as I'm watching, especially once they find Archer looks in the camera and you're like, they zoom out and it's a HP LCD monitor redressed as an enterprise monitor. I'm like, okay, this absolutely is. It's not a holodeck they're on, but this is a physical mock-up bullshit here. What a proficient liar Archer has turned into, and I forget which episode it was, season 1, like the first time he was really forced to lie, and I feel bad for not taking notes or putting this in my notes, but there have been a couple key entries at this point into Archer the liar. If there's any shaking ground that this episode's on, it's the bonkers timeline that they have to fail in their initial interrogation attempts, conceptualize this plan, build the fucking set piece.
Which they make quite a deal of in the episode of how complex it is to build something like this because of the details you need to make sure you don't fuck up.
I was almost like a little writer's room wink. Like, you can't just make a ship. The ship needs a history. What's the language on the panels? What conditions? Blah, blah, blah. So you have to make the set piece. You have to come up with the fucking story, right? You got to build your campaign setting. Because this is basically a LARP going on in here, right? This is an escape
Apparently,
room
T'Pol's
LARP.
got some dungeon master experience because she
I
comes up with
believe
the
it.
whole thing.
I believe it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're doing all this within 8 hours or something crazy is...
It was 3 days. It was 3 days ago that they encountered the ship and disabled it and captured them. So all that stuff happens over
it
a
was
few days.
8 hours to the point where they realize it's do or die.
Yes. That's when the other ship shows up and they're on the clock.
Even 3 days, like...
Oh yeah, it strains any form of credulity that they pull this down, but at
yes,
least
it's a TV show about moving faster than light and also being able to materialize and dematerialize objects through thin air, but still. Listen, I worked in high school theater. I know what building set pieces takes.
Oh yeah. Your tech team is going to need time to build that set, you need to customize your alien language and everything, but
so anyways, Archer has become quite the liar. And it's interesting to watch that progression where he is willing to jump headfirst into a ridiculous scheme where he is the linchpin. His acting is going to be the linchpin. And I've noticed that there is a acting style that Scott Bakula has where he is portraying Jonathan Archer, who is trying to sell a bullshit story. There's a lot of... what was a Con Aramar? There's a lot of Con Aramar here, right? I'm lying that I'm now a scummy pirate and we're flying our shitty ship and I hate you, but I gotta bro you up to get, the thing I want. So yeah, the style that Bakula employs to portray Archer actively acting as something else, like, it rubs me the wrong way, but I can understand that's why Archer would think that... I'm sorry, why Bakula would think that Archer... like, Archer can't fully commit. Even when Archer's supposed to be mad or, like, yelling or, like, impassioned, there's still, like, this wall he can't act past. And I think it's intentional. It annoys me, but I recognize it for what it is, and I accept it.
I think it's like, it's Archer's not, Scott Bakula's an actor, Archer is not. So Archer's, like, trying to think on his feet, feel his way through situations in a fashion in which he's still an amateur at this particular kind of deception. So it adds attention, of course, because it's like, he's not going to quite be able to pull this off. And it's like a matter of when Degra finally figures it out.
But when he, like, touches the holodeck wall of the limit that Archer can act up to, like the point where Archer's character gets their back up, like, oh, what, you still don't trust me? Like that. It feels like there's shades of Napoleon Dynamite.
Gosh,
Gosh, Degra, 3 years later, you still don't trust me? What a jerk. Ugh. So
I, I really like that they spend as much time as they do in the deception first before bringing you out and giving you the rest of the story.
why?
Because like you said, you kind of know like what the fuck is going. You think something's going on, but like what's going on, and you spend time in the deception, particularly with Degra, like giving some information away and all of that, which again, we haven't seen much of him aside from like his stern meetings with the Terminus System Legion of Doom. And his character starts to come out a little bit. And because you spend so much time, when the deception is finally put on pause and they sedate him for a while so Archer can like talk to everybody and he comes out, you find out that all that information that you as the audience watched come out was the first time all of them heard it. So when he admits like he designed the weapon, that's like the first thing Trip mentions. He's like, "Oh, that motherfucker, he's the guy. He's the man. He did it. Like
He killed
he
my
is
sister.
he's the dude." Interesting. Like, "Oh, I got to hear that they heard that for the first time that right there and I got to see it." I thought that was a neat trick.
I enjoy that they spend so long in character in the ruse because it is a fun what if to explore, right? Like Twilight was just depressing. This side of things where humanity has been scattered, like again, I know it's bullshit, but watching him flesh that out, talk about their relationship, um, it's good. And as he gets Degra to start opening up, talking about his children, how his wife wasn't happy that they had to relocate to this R&D, the shitty R&D industrial zone, the humanizing of Degra as they watch the footage, and basically all the guy could think about was like, how many of these, was it million or billions that died?
When he talked about the initial probe, he
How many
said
people died?
7 million died.
7 million. How many of those were children?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a Voyager grade Dr. Mengele, right?
Yeah, no, they humanize him sufficiently that you don't hate him for just being the bad guy. He
You also
clearly
don't
has a
resent,
conscience.
and you don't resent Archer necessarily for not just slitting this, not blowing him out an airlock in the end when, and there's other reasons why they don't do anything bad to that crew because they want to keep the element of surprise. But excellent job taking one of the season's bad guys. And this is hard too, because like Legion of Doom, it might as well be the fucking Dick Tracy Rogue Gallery. Buttons Malone and fucking Bricktop and
Very
whatever.
colorful, but you don't know much about him.
Well, and you don't want to, there's the stupid insectoids that are mean and vicious, and there's a reptilian that have terrible fashion sense. So far, the most interesting have been the SeaWorld guys and Degra. I think Degra's also gotten the most screen time up to this point as well.
He has, like, and it's easy to see why, because, as the most humanoid form of Zindi, to make that the guy who's designing the weapon, that's the least amount of makeup you got to put on a guy every time and allows them to act more, kind of interact with the characters. When they pause the deception, come back to Enterprise, we get the fill-in of what happened. They went back to the test site. Degra showed up, didn't know Enterprise was there, so Enterprise just like straight disabled the ship, took them captive, tried to download their database, and it kind of deleted everything except one letter that Degra was writing to his wife and kids.
These clowns. These Zindi idiots. First of all, you're doing your super dangerous weapons tests. It's you and 2 other ships. And then Shran comes in there with his buddy's carpet shtick, right? Which, if you're not in the US and we're around during like the 90s, Buddy's Carpet was some real annoying
Take a look at their ads on YouTube.
Come on down to Buddy's Carpet. Yeah, come on down to the Andorian Mining Consortium. I'm going to get you a great discount on a finder's fee. I guarantee. And then gave them savage ass beatings, special guest star Enterprise on a 2v3 and stole their fucking weapon. And it's like these guys haven't figured out, like, hey, it's dangerous to be out. We shouldn't be alone. I'm a super important.
The humans' main difference. Not only are the humans here, they are handing out ass whoopings. So,
yeah, we need like beefed up security. Also, I am the head of the super illegal and important weapons program. Maybe I need more than 2 other people in my ship around me. Like, for as smart of a guy as this is, you need a general above him being like, yeah, post like a permanent fleet or whatever. Also, jumping back into the ruse, Archer's story is good. And that's basically like Earth was a diversion. The insectoids were getting everybody else to focus on Earth while they built a big badass fleet. And then after Earth fell, they crushed you guys, and you know, you were imprisoned in this and that. So solid on that, right? They capture him, they get Degra over, and Degra's 2 lackeys. Still, there's only 1 brig. Is that what we're saying, right?
Correct.
I disagree with having all of your prisoners in one place, but whatever. And he doesn't want to cooperate, neither do his guys. And maybe if they had more time, they could do more creative things. But Phlox has a morally nebulous discovery he's made, and that's, look at that, I can manufacture forgetty pills.
I do love that Phlox continues his reputation as being willing to do some off the books dirt, some medical dirt on behalf of this mission, whether it's casually creating temporary clones of your chief engineer or facilitating the enhanced interrogation techniques of the captain such that he can utilize a forget-me-not treatment into some actionable intelligence. Phlox is your man. He's willing to do the medical dirt you need done.
Let's go back to the no book, the plot mistake book of milestones and achievements that shall never be mentioned again. Come on with me. We're gonna page past Federation necromancy. Oh, there's trans warp. We'll get past that one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, slug clones that have full memories. I could have gone for a scene where Archer said, hey, I just had to watch my good friend die. How about we take this guy designing the fucking Death Star to kill the rest of Earth, and we make a clone out of him, and we pump him for info. We do some Rick Sanchez to his ass, and then I could watch him slowly die. And then, you know, Phlox could have been like, hey, I'm out of slugs. Or, you know, humans, turns out that they embed their memories, but, you know, who knows if these guys will transfer their memories in the same, you know, encoded DNA.
Yeah, no, I think you have a point. They could have brought it up in some fashion. You know, Archer could have concluded, and then when he's about to die anyway, I can have Trip come down here with a baseball bat and he can get his yayas out. Like, everyone's a winner. Mm-hmm. It's like we squared away. But they cut right to the chase to say, we can enhance interrogation this guy if we set up a circumstance and a story and a whole apparatus by which he starts to willingly kind of cough some stuff up. I do like that Hoshi seems to be the one that's like monitoring the whole adventure and like feeding information in and taking information out and trying to like create a response in real time. And
how would they do that, Joe?
Well, with a subdermal communicator? This apparently shit hot tech of the 22nd century that the Makos have, subdermal communicator. You know, the sort of thing that they used on Voyager. You know, once, just one time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some moons never close for me. It's the concept that you would
If you
chip
just
people.
joined us over the last 100 episodes, you probably have no fucking idea what we're talking about. But let's just say that a lot of
Sore
literature
subject.
plots would have been solved by the presence of subdermal communicators, a technology that we have now canonically established existed before Kirk did. And
Not
is
just
simple.
technology that existed, but was actively installed in duty personnel.
Correct.
What a horrific, not a horrific, but I mean, again, this is some real morally brown stuff they're doing here. We're gonna drug this guy. We're going to LARP him through a oh, what was that movie? The Game with Michael Douglas. Which,
Yeah.
if you have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Fucking 10 out of 10. One of my favorites. But we're gonna game him. And then after like it kind of fails, Archer goes right back and says, I'll fucking forgetty pill your ass again, and we'll do this whole thing again. I'm gonna go year of hell on you, fool. I'm gonna show the Kremens how you do it. We're
Yeah.
gonna run this bitch over and over and over until I have murder, a workplace, what was it, coworker murder simulated. That I've gotten all the endings. I get the good ending. I'm gonna get the bad ending. I'm gonna get the really bad ending.
I really liked that there is no sort of like magical moment where Degra and Archer really understand each other. No, they're enemies. They are enemies. They have a moment, like you said, there's a very humanizing speech that Degra lays out where he considers the moral dimension of what he's responsible for, and Archer has to like play out his own emotions and try and conceal that and stay in character at the same time, even though like this is some shit he had never heard before. But ultimately, Degra sees Archer as the enemy, and Archer definitely sees Degra as the enemy, and that is still the case at the end. And part of that is I will just keep trying to find novel ways of torturing you such that I can get the information I need about where the fuck this weapon is if you're not just gonna fucking tell me.
You're gonna drink all of the space Rufinol on a long enough timeline, but he doesn't have that timeline, and that's gonna be a pretty good vehicle to move the plot forward. Um, I, I, I would have liked when Degra was disclosing the emotional weight that the deaths on Earth carried, and he's like, I'm sure I already told you this, and he's like, no, actually, you hadn't. Like Archer to kind of pump that a little bit more and be like, we weren't the enemy. You guys got played. Like if you were going to have Degra come out sympathetic at all, like that would have been a really great vehicle to create that situation. But like at the bare minimum, there should have been some sort of protest from Archer. Like we didn't even know you guys existed. The whole thing has been manufactured. Like what did they tell you? Who is feeding you this information? Who is showing you this video? Like understanding who the real man behind the curtain from the future was. But that's not what Archer's mission was. And again, there will come to be a time factor on this, so there's bigger fish to fry.
So, where the tension picks up is that not only do they have a ticking clock of getting the information that they have gathered suggests 6 possible locations where the weapon might be, because they're all gas giants that are in relative close approximation to where Enterprise is, but some of them are as far away as 40 some
13
light
weeks,
years.
yeah.
So it's not realistic to search all of them. What they need is for Degra to narrow down where it is that they should be looking. And at the same time, there's more Xindi approaching, and they've only got a matter of hours left before they're going to show up and their cover is going to be blown. And at that point, anything they try and do to intercept the weapon might be for naught if they're super ready for them. So they've got to try and speedrun Degra to giving up more information.
Now, Degra even calls out and says, like, listen, I get for you, it's been for 3 years. And I'm believing what you're telling me. But for me, it feels like yesterday we were still enemies. So forgive me if I don't entrust you with like encrypted coordinates for where our base was, comm channels that we used to use, this and that. I'm quick to point out bad retreads and complain about it. This is all retread here. I mean, this is like, I don't know, it feels like at least a quarter of every Romulan episode that we ever see where it's like an Enterprise crew member gets kidnapped and put into like some ultra realistic simulator to extract information. Sometimes it's not even really the Romulans. It's a, little child demigod with a fucking holodeck of his own.
The Romulans do like to MK Ultra people, don't they?
Yeah.
It's
In
like their
fact,
thing.
I like when Archer's like, okay, we're going to build a mock-up of a shuttlecraft. We're going to do that in Cargo Bay 2, which we shall now call Guantanamo Bay 2.
We're going to do some waterboarding real quick.
Yeah, this is going to be some real off-the-book stuff.
So they try to get him drunk.
Leave. Yeah, which, again, I mean, you could have just drugged him. Whatever. They can't just leave the area with Degra's ship either, because if it comes to light that Degra's been kidnapped, then that would indicate that, he's been compromised and they can change locations and basically go deeper undercover. So they don't call that out specifically, but that's a clever plot device to make them have to fully commit to the bit without, actually just getting a laser scalpel and slowly dissecting them and real physical torture. They are also dealing with the additional struggle that lingering radiation from the weapons test is fucking with Enterprise's systems. And as a result, the simulator down in Guantanamo Bay 2 starts malfunctioning. And that's kind of what tips Degra off that shit's fucky.
Yeah, there's a nice bit of tension in the fact that the radiation is not only it's fucking with the systems, but it's also the key reason why they have been successful in hiding from the other Xindi, because it's not possible for them to read what's going on there. So they're like stuck in here as long as they can handle it, but it then creates these potential risk factors that ultimately manifest in, while Archer gets really good information, he gets a potential location put into the computer by Degra when he thinks that he's the only one putting in the navigational coordinates, by feeding a fake conversation on a quote secured channel with other Xindi primates. But before he can really like lock down confirmation the way that he wants, the aforementioned flaw happens. Degra starts to get his natural suspicion, starts to raise his hackles, and he doesn't understand the code. He doesn't understand that if he just tried to give Archer a head wound, he could have had a very nice time in there the rest of the day. But instead tries to pull a quick prison shank maneuver. And if you bust out a knife, Archer's going to have to pass out the head wounds
That's
himself.
not sexy. You don't want that.
No, that's not cash money or sexy.
That prison shank, which is the most wicked-looking serrated turkey carver you've ever seen, that was a bad prop to leave unaccounted. That should have probably exited the shuttle much earlier.
Reed was in charge of the shuttle, remember? So he just left a knife in there for Degra to find.
Well, the knife was there initially so they could cut the gummy worms out of his veins. Which that was
that's right. Yeah, the Regalan bloodworm. I like that they addressed what that was. Like that it's one of Phlox's little things.
I want to say that's been mentioned several times before. Like, it appears that it goes in through the nose. And I also believe that is the same worm that Phlox treated Reed with after his leg got fucked up, that you are to believe that you pee that thing out.
That is correct. That is what happened. He also treated it with Travis Mayweather, and when he got fucked up. When he went to Ryza and he's off screen, he like hurt his Adonis-like body in some fashion.
Those worms have been in a lot of urethras. They get around.
They do, and they've been in Degra.
You might not get to go to Ryza, but there will still be a conjugal visit during your tour on Enterprise.
Oh, when the
Yes.
simulation fails is when Degra tries to cover himself up in what he had done. That no, I didn't give you the actual coordinates. It's a fuel processing facility, and without much in the way of options, Archer cooks up a second rope dope.
Well, before that, the critical mass point, Degra believes that things are fucky. He gets the knife out, or no, he's like, hey, basically challenge questions. Over 3 years, I'm sure I told you the names of my daughters. And he's like, ugh. And then, Hoshi comes through and says it's like Poppy and Chippy or whatever the fucking kids' names were. And then he's like, who was the older one? And then Archer's like sitting there like, bro, you got a 50-50 chance. Just say Chippy.
Yeah.
Say Poppy. It's one of the two. Worst case scenario, what's going to happen anyways happens. Like, come on, man, learn how to lie. And that's when he, freaks out and they storm in. And I would have liked to see the Makos get in there with those electric nightsticks and zap them up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Gonna be with the electric
Buenos Aires. Bzz, 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 bzz.
They're doing their part.
Yeah. Toss him back in the pokey. And at this point, it looks like Degra has the upper hand, that he has seen through the weak facade of Archer's plans. And then I catch that whiff of, oh, you know what? Let me look at this real quick. Let's see who the director was on the classic, the Voyager classic, Origin of Juggalo Tech, The Thaw. Tell me it's V'ger. Damn it, Martin Rush.
Oh, you thought that he had also directed The Thaw? Oh, wow.
Because it's the same type of you thought you saw through my tricks, but then I tricked you again and you didn't know about the second time, and I get the upper hand and you look like a clown. Archer comes up with a new full immersion escape room.
Yeah, this is like when the Battlestar Galactica LARPed on an actual submarine.
That sounds dope.
Yeah, well, apparently it was.
That sounds expensive. That sounds
Nordic. The Nordic people for you. They just treat that shit real serious.
Me too. So here's the new con, right? We're gonna put this con right up there with when Tom Paris gets his groove back, along with
Neelix.
Live
fast and prosper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can't
one of the best.
Yeah, can't get when you don't know the episode is going to be about Tom and Neelix getting their groove back, right? Like you think that it's going to be like a relatively anodyne Trek story where them getting duped is simply part of the story, not the climax that leads to them buying back their street cred. But in this circumstance,
you thought the plot was that they were trying to stop bad people from defrauding the galaxy, but in reality, the plot was about Neelix and Tom proving to themselves that they're still
that they're not soft. Yeah,
they're still liars. They're great liars and con men and thieves. So here's the deal: we have figured out how to use, what is it? Slipstream technology? What the fuck are they doing? Transwarping?
Essentially, what they have found out in the kind of the ether of the episode is that the Xindi travel by subspace portals of some kind, that they have these little portals that go from place to place and they know where they are and they use them to travel faster than light or to shortcut or whatever the case may be.
A byproduct of the spheres?
Yes.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And they know they exist. So what they decide to do is fake the concept that they have repurposed Xindi technology to be able to access those same portals and create a whole metafiction that the ship is having difficulty using it, and bring Degra out of his cell with his guys and try and force him at gunpoint to help him, and then they refuse. But then say, oh, Mayweather's just so awesome, he figured it out on his own, to create this very sincere feeling circumstance where they're trying to see if Degra will respond to the idea that they made their way to one specific location, which is Azanti Prime, which is where he identified inadvertently is the location of the weapon. And they're really trying to determine if the coordinates they have and that identification are true by convincing him it's true they just went there. And the climax is he buys it. And he exclaims, like, no, you're still never going to get to the weapon. We have too strong of defenses here. And Archer, like, turns to him and says, gotcha, bitch. We're still at the test site.
Ashton Kutcher comes running out.
Oh, yeah.
With some Ed Hardy apparel on, and everybody's jumping around, and then Degra's friends come out of the fucking bathroom and they're laughing, and they come up and give him a hug and like, you got punked. You're on candid camera. Degra's like, oh, you motherfuckers got me so good, damn. Hey, where's that roof and all that?
He seriously makes sure that Degra knows, like, I fooled you. I got you, bitch.
I got you, and your simple primate brain is so prone to fucking chemical tampering. We're just going to drug you guys all over again. And
that's literally what they do. This plot ends up solved by the fact they drug them all again, so they forget any of this happened, drop them off on their ship, and then like peace out before the other Indies show up. And the episode just fucking ends at that point. But it kind of gets to, because they told the story it needed to tell. Enterprise knows where the weapon is now. This has been their goal all season, right? Where is the weapon? Stop it from deploying. If you can, convince the Xindi not to do this. If you can't, blow that shit up. Well, now they know where it is.
Feathers in the cap to Terry Matalas and his script. Like, just like the Vulcan Resident Evil, right? He covers all of his bases. They have possession of Degra's ship, but they can't just go in the database and hack it because Degra started wiping it before they had a chance to board, thus necessitating interrogating Degra directly. But then when they put Degra back on his ship, freshly roof-and-alled, we made it look like they were basically huffing space fumes in here. That's why they're all knocked the fuck out. Well, that doesn't explain the database partially deleted. No, but we're calling attention to it, so it's not just an open fucking plot hole, and we're going to say that's there's nothing we can do about it, and we need to move on. And that's all you need to do.
Yeah, because they're going to like, oh, everything was fucky, something happened, and they're not going to want to think too hard about it either. Like just natural tendency of people. Like I can fill those gaps in my mind, like you said. Do enough so that your audience can take that little bit of leap, and you're good. You did all the hard part. You built a structure around this episode, provided the tension, provided the stakes, propelled the story forward in a material fashion, and gave me an explanation as to why your ending works. Perfect. I love where they left it. I don't have much else to say. I know that we're only like about 45 minutes on this, but it's a fucking tight episode. It doesn't waste a lot of time. There's not a lot to make fun of here. It's just good. And it was where the show's starting to kind of pick up the pace as they get into the middle of the season, right? Like they've only got like 10 episodes left. So like we've got to start stringing them together. No more North Stars, no more major diversions. Like we might have one more actually here where it's like not quite directly plot related, but it is definitely story related. And so you got to start setting things up.
It's interesting when we come across these episodes that don't have a lot of set pieces. And there's not a lot of turns of events because we come up short on the runtime in the podcast. But the long scenes between these characters, it's good. We can't sit there and go over every single line of dialogue. Like all the dialogue between Degra and Archer, especially within the ruse, is solid. The connections they make there are solid. It's a good episode. It's definitely worth watching. And I would really wish there were more episodes like this where it's just like I'm not taking notes. I'm just enjoying dialogue on the screen. And that's fundamentally, I think, what Star Trek can very easily be, and that's what Star Trek made its mark on television with, because it's cheap.
It's
When
true.
you're doing 30 episodes, and it's a shame that we don't really get a lot of these types of episodes in Enterprise.
I mean, and what you just said though about the economy being so much of the appeal. I mean, the number one thing we said about Picard. Mattel has made the best season of Star Trek in 20 years with a box of scraps and using the economy he was forced into to create good content. Who knew?
Yeah, it's a byproduct of necessity.
So I figure since we're talking about the man this week, might as well give a shout out. So, and if you like those shout outs, by the way, there's a bunch of Picard reviews on our Patreon. You should go check it out, www.patreon.com/feature please. What are we watching next week?
Season 3, episode 15, Harbinger. Teleplay by Manny Cotto. Story by Rick Berman, Bram Braga, directed by David Livingston. There's a man raising his hand. He looks like a Tootsie Roll that was forgotten in a glove box for a long time and then reproduced, and he's just an old, faded, crusty piece of shit. Enterprise rescues an alien from a massive spatial anomaly, but its lone pilot refuses to explain why he was there. Reed and Hayes confront each other over their roles on the ship.
Hayes kills Reed and takes his place.
Yes, but I was thinking about Reed in the shower.
As one does.
As one, just thinking about Star Trek Enterprise in the shower, because that's where my life is at. He has not been miserable this season. And that is enjoyable to me because he was really sucking the fun out of the show in the scenes that he was in. And he's still had some shitty moments this season. But I think overall it has been a much more charitable series of scripts coming his way for him to act. So I'll be curious to see what version of Reed we're going to get here. If it's the previous little motherfucker, if it's going to be I don't hate you.
Well, what we don't hate is you, noble listener, and we look forward to joining us next week on this continued adventure through Xindi space. See you then.